Coming up on Big Ten today, a wild weekend of conference hoops, some eye-opening results as we head down the stretch. Trent Meacham here to make sense of it all. Women's hoops in the spotlight as well. The Trojans finished off a sweep of the Bruins, plus we have ourselves a tourney bracket. Ashley Adamson stops by to get us ready, and the Big Ten wrestling tourney this week as well. And on that front, I have two words for you: Shane Sparks. We'll wind him up and let him go on Big Ten today. Now. Welcome in. It is Big Ten today. It is truly great to have you with us on this Monday. There is a ton going on, to say the least, and we will dive into all of it in the next hour. We are going to start with men's hoops. Trent Meacham joins me now. And Trent, 16 of the 18 Big Ten teams played since the last time we had an edition of Big Ten Today. So there's certainly a lot to unpack after a weekend that maybe gave us some clarity in terms of the very top of the conference.
Yes, the state of Michigan is right there. And this is where I'm at, Dave, is we still got 1 week left. So the champion, we might know one of these two teams, but you look at a team like Illinois, where a week ago they were not looking good, now 2 big wins. And so much can happen just game after game, and we got 1 big week left before we get into the conference tournaments. We're in March. We're seeing buzzer beaters already, and a big week of hoops lined up before we get into these tournaments. So I'm excited for that.
Oh, I am too. Yeah, we've had some incredible finishes, some really competitive games. Let's review the weekend. That is our big story. Just take you through the results. It started Friday. Purdue ended a 4-game skid. Northwestern won its 3rd straight. Saturday, Maryland bounced back from the MSU heartbreak. Nebraska damaging home loss to the Gophers. Oregon continues to play well, 5 straight wins. Indiana's making a late charge. And then 2 big ones yesterday in the battle for first place. Michigan State, the remarkable run continues. 5 straight wins. They are all quad 1 wins. They beat Wisconsin, and Illinois, as Trent alluded to, went on the road and pounded Michigan. So let's start at the top here, Trent. As we look at the standings, you see Michigan State on top at 15-3. Michigan now a game behind them. Purdue and Maryland and Wisconsin battling for those final 2 double byes. So that is the situation. Michigan State, and again, we see it here, Trent, alone in first place. And I got to say, like when they lost at home to Indiana, so they had lost 3 of 4 at that point. They had the great start to the season. They're 9-0 at the beginning of conference play. But let's just be honest. They had played the easiest schedule in the Big Ten at that point. They kind of thought, okay, maybe this was more a byproduct of the schedule. They're good. Maybe they're not elite. They have completely changed my frame of mind here in these last 5 games. I mean, again, I want to restate what I just said. 5 straight quad 1 wins. Like, just to play 5 quad 1 win games in a row is remarkable. To win all 5 of them, to be dominant down the stretch in those games, locking up on defense. What has stood out to you, first about the win against Wisconsin, and then maybe more broadly about the way Tom Izzo's team has played of late?
Yeah, Dave, I saw it up close and personal when they got started. And that game in Champaign against Illinois, I was there courtside. But there's so many things that have been impressive about them. And you look at their second halves over this 5-game winning streak. Yesterday or this weekend, they outscored Wisconsin by 11 in the second half. That's what they've done, 11.5 points differential in those 5 wins in the second half. And it's because they're pounding on the boards and they're running in transition and they're relentless. So there's no let up with that. And what's different about them, yes, they push the ball, but they don't always bail you out with quick shots or bad shots. They're always hunting the paint. It's the guards, it's the bigs, it's the wings. So there's no let up for 40 minutes. And over the course of a game, at some point, they're just going to wear you down. They've done that time after time. So many different guys that can beat you. So they're good defensively. They're good on the boards. And now I think the key guy that has really stepped up is Jace Richardson. He's playing more minutes. They're giving him the ball. Once again, made some big plays, not just scoring, but assisting down the stretch. So it's a complete team. And I got to believe one of Tom Izzo's better coaching jobs to play this many players, to have them playing like this. It's been really, it's been fun to watch. I did not see this coming a few weeks ago.
Yeah, it's amazing. No, I didn't either. Again, as I've already confessed here, and as you said, the depth's incredible. They're the only team in the country with 10 players averaging 5 points or more. I am blown away by the defense, to your point. And you look at those 5 games, and in those 5 games, the last 4 minutes, they have outscored their opponents by a combined 44-20. And if you throw out the Purdue game, Purdue was actually decent down the stretch against Michigan State. But if you throw out that game, the other 4 teams are 1 of 19 from the field in the last 4 minutes of those games combined. And again, these are elite teams. These are some of the best teams in the Big Ten that they have done this against. It's a remarkable run here for Tom Izzo, and now he is 1 win away from clinching at least a piece of the regular season title. Would be his 11th. It would tie him with Bob Knight and Piggy Lambert, great Purdue coach, for the most ever in the Big Ten. I do want to touch on Wisconsin before we move on. I think it's fair to point out they were without Max Klesmit. He was on the bench in a walking boot. That is a huge part of their team. But it felt to me like this was more about Michigan State than it was about Wisconsin. Wisconsin just didn't have a great day. They had some open shots that frankly, they typically would hit that they didn't hit. But did you take much of anything from Wisconsin in this one?
When you're 5 for 32 from threes, that's it's going to be hard to win games on the road. And you think about, they were right there, under about 6 minutes left or so. It's a 1 possession game. So look, this is a really good team. Michigan State, I'll real quick on them, Dave. In that game, they did something different defensively. Wisconsin, how they spaced the floor, spread it, a lot of empty side ball screens. Michigan State was going under a lot, and so they eliminated the rotation on that weak side, on that roll man, and gave heavy help from the top defender. So they played him a little bit differently. John Tonje hit the first play of the game, hit a 3, but then really struggled shooting from the perimeter. If they could have knocked down some threes, that maybe would have forced Michigan State to change up defensively. So I still look at this Wisconsin team as they're playing really well. They got a couple wings that can go get you a bucket, really physical drivers. They do miss Max Klesmit. I love Kamar McGee, but I like him more off the bench, being a spark plug off the bench. Klesmit gives him another playmaker, another shot maker, and they looked a bit limited in that game. But still, I feel really good about Wisconsin down the stretch. Just in the makeup of this team, how they've played, how they're good on both ends of the floor, I think they'll respond just fine.
I'm with you. They have Minnesota and Penn State, their final 2 games, a team that has played really well and is kind of battling to be maybe a 2 or a 3 seed in the NCAA tournament. Again, just ran into a really hot team. And Michigan State's path helped considerably now by the fact that Michigan fell at home to Illinois in a game that in the end wasn't close as the Illini pulled away in the second half. Trent, you and I have talked about this. I'm a firm believer in the upside of Illinois. They have done some things over the course of the year to make me wonder a little bit about that assessment. But man, this is what they can be when they're hitting, particularly hitting from the outside. In the first half, let's be honest, they didn't hit well from the outside, but man, they just attacked the offensive boards. Again, still without Morez Johnson, but you get a taste of Illinois at its very best, and it's really good.
Yeah, and look, 11 for 23 from threes in the second half. They outscored Michigan by 30 points, 14 made threes to 4 made threes. That's a pretty good recipe for success. They beat them up on the glass, 19 offensive rebounds for 30 points. So those 2 things, when Illinois is doing that well, I mean, they're tough to stop. But I thought they did some other things, Dave, to help set up better quality looks, especially in the second half. And that involved their spacing, their cutting. Kylan Boswell, Will Riley, great cut off-ball cuts. Ivicic, who wasn't a big scorer in that game, was in foul trouble. I thought with his passing ability from the 5 spot, that just opened things up for them. And when they have a mindset of attacking first the basket and then shooting threes that are in rhythm and great flow, they're set up much better. They had it all going yesterday. I thought Ben Hummerkaus was really critical. Yes, he made some threes, but early in that second half, Ivicic went out with 3 fouls. And I thought, man, Golden had it going. There was no stopping him. Hummerkaus did a great job of fronting him. I do think Michigan could have gone to him more, but give Ben Hummerkaus, give the help side defense a lot of credit for that. And then finally, Kylan Boswell has not shot the ball great this season, but does so many other things well. And he impacted the game in so many ways: off the ball cuts, downhill drives, getting to the free throw line, getting to the glass, and maybe most importantly, just really shutting down Danny Wolf despite giving up 10 inches as well as anybody I've seen this season.
Agree with you there. Danny Wolf had an off game, 1 assist, 5 turnovers, really struggled to score. And from Michigan's point of view, again, he's got to be better. You're still in a position, though, where they've got Maryland coming in at home, a game you can see here Wednesday night on the Big Ten Network, and then they go to Michigan State. If you win both of those games, you still get a share of the Big Ten title, but certainly not the best game we've seen Michigan play by a long shot so far this year. What about Purdue? Gut check game for them. They had lost 4 in a row. They had a players-only meeting. They got UCLA coming in, and this was an interesting game because, you know, you build a lead, UCLA comes back, and then built a significant lead, and then the Boilers kind of summoned that finishing kick, Trent, that really stood out to me. I mean, they won this game basically in the last 8 minutes, and it felt to me like that was gut check time, right? Like, I don't want to say their season was hanging in the balance, but it would have been 5 losses in a row. UCLA had taken the lead there in the final 8 minutes. What did we learn about Purdue there down the stretch in that game?
Well, they got winning DNA, Dave. I mean, these guys, and especially Braden Smith, Trey Kaufman, I mean, they combined for 52 points. Smith makes so many big plays down the stretch, so I would not count them out at all. You throw in Fletcher Lawyer's 11 points. There's 63 points. You know, they're almost matching UCLA's 66, those 3 players. But your big 2 playing at such a high level. Braden Smith, you throw in the 8 assists. UCLA, you know, this isn't the team you typically think of getting right, just because this is a really hard-nosed team. They have great depth. They'll get after you defensively. And so, but Purdue, they were the tougher team. They made the winning plays down the stretch. Offensively, some big-time shots. Cam Heide hit a big shot there in the second half. And then I also go defensively, Dave. We talked about this on Friday with them. They have not done a good job of keeping the ball out of the paint, and I thought they were the more physical team, and I thought they kept the ball in front of them for the most part. There wasn't much easy for UCLA for 40 minutes, and so it's defensively, if they can hang their hat there, right, that's what Purdue defense lives here, that's what they say, and then you have a couple guys you can play through offensively, some others knock down shots. I feel really good about Purdue here in March. They're going to be a tough out. No matter who they're playing, Big Ten tournament, NCAA tournament, you got to always have a couple of the best players in the court, led by Braden Smith. They're in a good position, in my opinion.
And mentality-wise, it felt like there was just a shift in the second half. I think it was reflected in the second chance points. UCLA 9-0 second chance points in the first half. The second half was Purdue 16-0 in second chance points. So they got on the offensive glass, and again, kind of that play hard mantra certainly showed through for Purdue down the stretch. More on UCLA a little bit later in the show. They've got Northwestern tonight in Evanston. We'll touch on that one. I do want to talk about one other team that's battling at the very top of the league, battling for that double bye, and Maryland. They were coming off the heartbreaker against Michigan State, the Trey Holloman shot from beyond half court that knocked them off on Wednesday. Penn State was playing for its Big Ten tournament life. It was senior day for some players who have been really important to Mike Rhodes. They gave Maryland everything they could handle, Trent. What did you take from the game and the way that Maryland pulled it out at the end?
Yeah, Penn State's been playing well. For Maryland, this is such a versatile team. You know, I thought there's a few things there that show that they can give the ball to a guy like Rodney Rice and let Gillespie get off the ball a little bit, be more of a scorer, not have to deal with Ace Baldwin hawking him 94 feet. So the versatility of guys like that, I know Rice didn't shoot the ball well, but still valuable piece, just handling the ball, not turning over. Derek Queen, I thought he settled against Michigan State sometimes with perimeter shots, going to the basket. Penn State had no answer for him. 23.6 rebounds, had some blocks, he 4 steals. And Julian Reese, you know, you think about versatility, was not effective scoring the ball, but 15 rebounds, 3 blocks, 6 steals. So when you think of those interior players, their ability to move their feet, their great hands. This is a very versatile team. They got a lot of weapons, but I think defensively that really showed, especially down the stretch, locking up. And when it's not your night, maybe it's Rodney Rice who's played well, still impacting the game in positive ways, or Julian Reese doing so many things despite not scoring. So I like the makeup of this team. They bring quickness and athleticism off the bench, going on the road after that heartbreaking loss against a good Penn State team to pull that out. I think sets them up for now a big game, very big game at Michigan this week.
And I'm with you on Maryland. I mean, I think one of the things that really stands out is I know people are focused on they don't get anything off the bench. I mean, literally got nothing off the bench, 0 bench points for the second straight game. But of that starting five, which is the highest scoring starting five in the country, anyone on any given night can be the guy who beats you, and that makes them awfully tough to defend. As for Penn State, unfortunately knocked out of the Big Ten tourney with that loss. More from Trent coming up later in the show, but we're going to turn our attention to women's hoops coming up next. The bracket is set. The Trojans are the 1 seed. We'll look back on Saturday's game, get you set for the week in Indy with Ashley Adamson straight ahead. Women's hoops, the game of the weekend in all of college basketball on the women's side. USC left no doubt. Went into Pauley, finished off a season sweep of rival UCLA, 80-67, a game in which the Trojans never trailed. Juju Watkins was sensational, 30 points, 5 assists, 3 blocks in front of a sold-out, star-studded crowd. She carried USC to its first regular season conference title in 31 years.
I've never won regular season, so, just another thing to kind of tick off the list. But I think when you play with players like Kiki and like the team we have, and like he said, our seniors, you want to do your best. You don't want to let anybody down. I don't want to let coach down. So whatever I have to do to do that and just go out there and have fun. I'm just out there playing, really.
Just really pissed off we didn't show up and do our jobs. And we credit to USC. They were tougher. And that's very tougher and more disciplined, and they did their jobs, and we weren't as tough, and we didn't do our jobs. It's pretty much like this. Nothing to do with that.
Strong stuff there from Corey Close. We'll talk about the UCLA side of it in a moment. Ashley Adamson joining me now. As promised, Ashley going to be hosting the Big Ten Network's coverage of the women's Big Ten tourney Thursday, Friday, Saturday. We've got all the games here on the Big Ten Network, so we are the place to be for the women's tourney. Ashley, I want to talk to you about USC and UCLA first. Let's talk about the Trojans' point of view, and then we'll get to UCLA and Corey Close, who you know well. USC, you surprised, not that they won at Pauley, but with how convincingly they won?
Yeah, Dave, I was really surprised it was as one-sided as it was. I thought it was going to be a close game. USC, as you mentioned, never trailed. They led by almost 20 most of the fourth quarter. And I agree with Lindsay Gottlieb. She made this point when we talked to her last week. She said a regular season championship is the truest mark of consistent excellence, especially in a conference like this year's Big Ten, where you've got 12 or 13 NCAA tournament teams. So I think for the Trojans to leave no doubt by sweeping a team that could still be a #1 seed in the NCAA double tournament is remarkable. And I also want to underscore what you said, Dave, about just what a big deal this game was from an environment standpoint for women's basketball in LA and on the West Coast, to see the crowd, to see the celebrities, sold out arena, John Legend, Jason Sudeikis, Reggie and Cheryl Miller. Like, it was an A's list of who's who. And I just think that moment was significant beyond just the obvious thing that was at stake, which was a lot. And these Trojan players, this was the first time that any of them had won a game at Pauley Pavilion. It had been a little while.
I agree with you. It was an amazing environment. I thought the Miller siblings were probably the best part of it, sitting next to one another and wearing the jerseys of their respective schools. But we're looking at some of the clips now. It really was an amazing scene with all the celebrities there, and not the least of the celebrities that was there was Juju Watkins. She was amazing. And it's pretty cool, Ashley. Like, obviously, these last few years in the Big Ten, we've had Caitlin Clark, the best player in women's basketball and a player who really transcended the game. And now, once again, we've got the best player in women's basketball in Juju Watkins. Feel kind of fortunate to be able to witness this. I don't know that I have the words for her performances, particularly against UCLA this year, so I will give you the floor.
Yeah, well, thanks for that. We're running out of superlatives, truly. I mean, this was her third 30-point game against UCLA, and she made some plays, especially in the first half, that just sort of like leave you smiling and shaking your head. I feel like she's never phased. I don't think I've ever seen her break a sweat. And we can talk about her offense all day long, and we should, but I think the thing that we should be talking even more about is her defense. That's the thing that doesn't get enough attention. 3 blocks and 2 steals in this game. It wasn't the 8 blocks that she had the first time out against UCLA, but the effort, Dave, that it takes when every team you face is building their entire game plan around stopping you, to go for 30, but then to be able to impact the game on the other end in such a meaningful way. Like, there are very, very few players who are that good on both ends and make a commitment to the defensive end when you are as big of an offensive star as Juju Watkins is. So that's what makes her special. But I thought Lindsey Gottlieb also pointed this out post-game. She said this win showed USC's growth. It was evidence that they've become a team. And Juju was Juju, but I thought Kiki Iriafen took over in the second. Rhea Marshall was terrific. I think she had 5 assists and no turnovers from the 5 spot, which is remarkable. Avery Howell, the freshman, had those 2 huge back-to-back threes in the fourth quarter. So this was a team win, and that's the thing for USC, I think. Juju can put them on their back and get them pretty far. But to have a truly, truly special season, Dave, like a national championship season, it can't be just her, and they know that. So Saturday night, we saw a team who may be young, but they know who they are. They have a ton of confidence, and they have likely what I believe is a National Player of the Year in Juju Watkins.
Yeah, I mean, you maybe could make some arguments that, Hannah Hidalgo, I know, is going to get some support, Paige Beckers, but man, I mean, when you do what she has done on the biggest stage, I think it's hard to go against Juju Watkins. She feels like the fairly clear-cut National Player of the Year here. Okay, so let's get into UCLA, because I don't want to make UCLA a postscript in any sense in this game, because UCLA, I mean, when we had the NCAA bracket reveal, UCLA is the #1 overall seed. I mean, again, this is a team that won its first 23 games. It was #1 for the bulk of the season here, and yet we saw Corey Close's reaction after the game, clearly unhappy, and not just unhappy with losing, but unhappy with kind of the way that her team performed, making it clear that they were out-toughed in this game. You have known Corey Close for a long time. Again, I think people know by now, but I'll say it again. You came from the Pac-12 networks. You spent a lot of time covering these teams. Give us some insight into what you think's going on with Corey, what her message is, and what she's so unhappy with.
Yeah, I've known her for 13 years, and that was as animated as I've seen Corey Close after a game. And I think, to be fair, we're used to seeing some fire in Westwood from her counterpart on the men's side, but she had every right to be angry. USC came out and imposed their will from opening tip. The Trojans were, as Coach said, the tougher, more disciplined, more together team. It just felt like they wanted it more, which I am sure is very difficult to watch as a coach on the sideline. But here's the deal. They're 27-2. Their only 2 losses happen to come against their bitter rival that will for sure be a #1 seed in the NCAA tournament. But I thought Jason Benetti made a terrific point on the Fox broadcast during the game. He said, Ryan Day will tell you that a regular season loss to your rival does not mean that your season is over. And Dave, I think that's a perfect analogy, because if the Bruins can use this as fuel and pull together and take a hard look in the mirror, all those things like we saw happen in Columbus, maybe this loss can galvanize them to do something really special in the postseason. And if that happens, this loss, both of these losses, will just be a footnote. But I think for Corey Close, it's can she break through? She took the Bruins to the Pac-12 tournament championship game 4 times. She never won the whole thing. She's been to the Elite 8, but not since 2018. So I think that's going to be one of the main intriguing storylines for this first expanded Big Ten tournament and UCLA moving forward.
Well, we may get this game again as soon as Sunday, kind of to your point, because we got the Big Ten tourney coming, and they are the #1 and #2 seeds. Let's get into that Big Ten tourney bracket. I don't want to spend all of our allocated time just on USC and UCLA because there's so many great storylines. Again, they get double byes along with Ohio State and Maryland. Michigan, Michigan State, Illinois, Oregon, Indiana, the single byes The action starts Wednesday, Minnesota and Washington. The Wednesday games are on Peacock. And then again, every game, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, here on the Big Ten Network with Ashley hosting our coverage. What else catches your eye here, Ashley? I mean, again, I know a lot of the oxygen is going to be taken up by USC and UCLA, and deservedly so. But, man, there are some great teams in this league.
I mean, first of all, I think you just look at the bracket as a whole, and it's a beautiful thing. I love looking at a conference tournament bracket, and especially one with 15 teams. Nobody's ever had to win 5 games in 5 days. So I think with this expanded format, it's going to be hard for a day one team to win the whole thing, especially when you look at the teams that, you know, they would have to go through. But what I love about the depth of the Big Ten is that of the 6 teams playing on Wednesday, 4 are projected as NCAA tournament teams right now. Like, think about that.
Yeah.
So Minnesota, they've got little margin for error, but this is a team that was ranked 5 or 6 weeks ago. And they play a Washington team that I think has the best chance, if you're going to talk about a dark horse, to make a run in Indy. They had that huge win over Oregon yesterday, and it feels like they've started to put it together. They've won 4 in a row. They nearly beat USC. And in conference play, no one has shot the ball better than Tina Langley's team. So keep an eye on the Huskies. We could keep going down the list as you look at the bracket. I mean, how about Iowa, the only team in the Big Ten who did beat USC?
Right.
They're the 3-time defending tournament champs, and they're the 11th seed. So, you know, their first round game is against a Wisconsin team that they handled yesterday. But the point is, when you have 12 or 13 NCAA tournament caliber teams playing in a conference tournament, it's a good recipe for some March Madness. I do not think we rock this week in Indianapolis, Dave. That's my big, bold prediction.
And to your point, I mean, as you say, like, we're not exaggerating when we say 12 or 13 NCAA tournament teams. I mean, Autumn Johnson has had 13 teams in her bracket this year. So we'll see what happens here. Ashley cannot wait to watch the coverage. We'll be glued to the television. Safe travels out to Indy, and we will be watching. Enjoy yourself. Indiana has snuck its way back into Mike DeCourcy's NCAA tourney bracket. The Hoosiers won handily at Washington on Saturday, their 4th win in 5 games. They finish their West Coast swing tomorrow at Oregon before finishing out the regular season Saturday at home against fellow bubble team Ohio State. Trent is back with me now. This is turning into quite a story. You had the backdrop of Mike Woodson stepping down. Not much drama in this one, Trent. I mean, they really, from the get-go, kind of removed all doubt. An impressive win and a team that is trending now toward March Madness.
Yeah, I really like how Indiana's playing. It's been remarkable. They won 4 or 5. I think the biggest key, Dave, is we've talked schematically, playing 4 guards and just one big, you know, Ballo and Renew. They're interchanging minutes essentially, but the leadership. This is something that I thought was lost on IU that they did not have. And I look at Luke Goody and Trey Galloway and Anthony Leal, and those 3 in particular. Yes, I think everybody's bought in, but those 3, man, they compete, they get after it, they play with a lot of pride. And that is what, in my opinion, has really enabled them to be playing this great basketball right now. And I've seen numerous people comment on this, but when you look at Leal's stat line, in 34 minutes, 0 points, only took 1 shot, but 4 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 blocks, 3 steals, plus 26. I mean,
26 is
talk
great.
about
Yeah.
impacting the game in positive ways, allowing your team, you know, to have success without even shooting the ball. I don't know if I've ever seen a stat line quite like that. So you throw in Luke Goody now, who's shooting the ball great, over 40% on the season. He's hit 5 threes. He's got 5 straight games in double figures, goes for 18 in that game. And, you know, Trey Galloway, the other guy I mentioned, 8.7 assists. They're playing great basketball. They're playing with a lot of pride. And you love to see it. And they're a dangerous team here coming into March.
And I don't want to overgeneralize, because I think that you can have guys who have pride who didn't grow up rooting for a team or didn't always want to play for a team. But it's probably no coincidence that Anthony Leal grew up in Bloomington, was Mr. Basketball in Indiana. Trey Galloway is from Indiana, dreamed of being a Hoosier. Luke Goody, who we've talked about, Trent Green is his uncle. His dad played at Indiana as well on the football team. So there is a strong connection with all three of those guys. But Malik Reneau, who doesn't have a strong connection to Indiana, he was tremendous, right? I mean, like, you can't just build a team of guys who always want to play for Indiana. You know, with a few exceptions, I think it's going to be tough to win exclusively that way. But I think it speaks more broadly to your point that there just kind of seems to be a renewed sense of confidence, no pun intended.
Yes, and I'm glad you brought up Reneau, because he was great. 22 points, 10 for 13 from the field. You know, Ballo played 15. I believe Reneau played 25 minutes. Ballo 15 minutes. You know, he only had 7. But then you go the previous game where Reneau was out, and Ballo goes for 20 and 12. So they always have a low post score that's very effective with his back to the basket. So that's very important, Dave, as you talk, as I've talked about these guards and these guys making plays, making shots, making winning plays around them. They have a guy in the post, whether it's Reneau or Ballo, that can be a real presence that they can feed the ball into and lean on. And we've seen both those guys step up in different games. Against Purdue, it was both of them. They combined for 27 and 11. So yes, they got the pride and the leadership and that kind of competitive spirit, but they got some guys that can really score with their back to the basket. And I think that's what makes them a complete team here in March. And 2 massive games this week. They're staying on the West Coast for the game against Oregon, as you mentioned, then Ohio State to finish it up. So a big week for Indiana, but they're playing great basketball right now.
A huge bubble game there against Ohio State. Let's focus on the other side of the bubble, and that is Nebraska. And the Cornhuskers have hit a rough patch at the worst time. They've now lost 4 of their last 5. They dug a massive hole against Minnesota, essentially dug out of it, but then the Gophers just a little bit too tough down the stretch. Brendan Rigsby, the hero in this one, the somewhat unlikely hero, I would say, 20 points after going scoreless in 8 of his previous 10 games. But what do you make of Nebraska and their inability to win a game they probably needed to get at home?
It's disappointing. They've been so up and down. You know, they had that stretch of 6 straight losses. Then they won 5 of 6. And then you mentioned their recent struggles, 3 losses in a row against some teams that you think these are winnable games and just have not been over the hump. You gotta start much better. It's inexcusable, I think, for what's on the line for them. And then just not shooting the ball. You know, how poorly they shot the ball, almost 50% from the free throw line. 4 for 26 or 4 for 16, from 3, giving up 10 made threes. There's an 18-point differential from the 3-point line. So that's unfortunate for them. Now, give Minnesota a ton of credit, kind of on the other end. They're 7-5 over their last 12. They've been playing really good basketball. Unfortunate for Nebraska, but man, Minnesota, that team has really come together. Different Frank Mitchell, he's so solid, such a tough, hard-nosed player, and then a guy to have like Brendan Rigsby to step in with those 20 points, the game winner. Incredible what Ben Johnson and Minnesota has done down the stretch. And finally, Dave, I'll say Nebraska. You know, you got they're at Ohio State this week and Iowa. You know, now can they reverse this skid and get back on a winning stretch? They still can play themselves back into the NCAA tournament, but these are must-win games for sure for them.
Mike had them. He sent me his updated seed list this morning. He had them as the very last team in the NCAA tournament. So we'll see. But as you said, a huge game at Ohio State. Again, that's 2 bubble teams. And then Pinnacle Bank Arena, I mean, they had been so good. Remember, they didn't lose a single conference game there last year. They have got to defend their home court in that game against Iowa, what figures to be a desperate Iowa team trying to get into the NCAA tournament. That coming up on the last regular season game this weekend. All right, good stuff from Trent. We'll check in with him one more time, get you set for tonight's action next. But we are turning our attention straight ahead to wrestling. The best conference in the country will crown its champs this weekend. Who better, he asked rhetorically, than Shane Sparks to get us ready? That's what he said. Big Ten hockey tournament starts this weekend. Here's a look at the bracket. Michigan State and Minnesota finished as the first co-champions in the history of the conference. The Spartans earned the 1 seed in a first-round bye based on the tiebreaker. The 2 seed Minnesota will host Notre Dame in the first round. Wisconsin will visit 3 seed Ohio State. And the 4-5 matchup takes place in Ann Arbor between Michigan and Penn State. All first-round series are best of 3. They run Friday through Sunday. You can see them on Big Ten Plus. This weekend, don't miss the 2025 Big Ten Wrestling Championships. 9 hours of live action from Session 1 through the championship round on the Big Ten Network. Exclusive individual mat cam coverage streaming live on Big Ten Plus. Shane Sparks is going to be all over that coverage, and as promised, he joins us now. Shane, I think there's like this misconception, or there's a line that people use. I've heard it used with the SEC basketball this year, where people are saying it's going to be harder to win the SEC tournament this year than to win the NCAA tournament, which is patently absurd, right? It's obviously harder to win a national championship just because of the volume of great people you have to go against. That being said, it's not that far off to say what a huge accomplishment it is to win the Big Ten and how close it equates to winning the NCAA. And it's certainly true that this is, in a lot of ways, a preview of the NCAA tournament.
The example I would give you, Dave, is Carter Starachi, 4-time NCAA champion,
Yes.
and based on the circumstances, a 2-time Big Ten champion.
Right.
He'll be going for his 3rd, so we see that
So
quite a
for
bit.
him, it's been easier, for whatever reason, right?
It's such a phenomenal event. It's
Yeah.
many times compared to the NCAA championship quarterfinals. You look at the depth in this conference. NCAA championships, a Big Ten team has won it 17 straight, and in 11 of those tournaments, the Big Ten has gone 1-2. Rankings, 10 weight classes, top 10, that's 100 wrestlers. A Big Ten wrestler is ranked in the top 10 45 times. I mean, pretty spectacular. 10 weight classes, in 7 of those, the Big Ten has the number 1 ranked guy. Those other 3 weight classes, a Big Ten guy is ranked number 2. It is a grind of a weekend. It is a meat grinder. It is going to be a phenomenal couple of days of wrestling. As I always say, Dave, to win the Big Ten championships, you better bring the big boy pants.
So they did have 5 of the 10 national champs last year coming from the Big Ten. So again, to your point, it's loaded. I mean, it's essentially, you do the math that you had half of the top wrestlers in the country by those rankings are going to be in Evanston this weekend. So let's get into some weight classes that really intrigue you. We'll start with 149. Tell me why.
149 pounds has 3 of the top 4 guys in the country at the weight class, and they've beaten up each other. Shane Van Ness from Penn State, he's ranked number 2. Kyle Parko of Iowa ranked 3rd. And then Ridge Lovett of Nebraska, the reigning Big Ten champion at 149, he is ranked 4th. Van Ness, he was able to beat Parko. Parko beat Lovett. Lovett beat Van Ness. And then they also have a guy, Dylan D'Amelio from Ohio State. He's ranked top 10. He's an All-American. So 149 pounds, Dave, really intriguing because I have no idea. And of course, in this sport, you got to go out and earn it. My opinion doesn't get you one single point on the scoreboard, but 149 is literally up for grabs. It is who can put 2 good days together to stand atop the podium as a Big Ten champion on Sunday.
And to your point, 3 of the top 4 in the Intermat rankings in that weight class are in the Big Ten. The 3 you lined up who have all knocked off one another this year. Okay, what about 157?
157 pounds, Dave, 7 of the top 9 in the Intermat rankings. And this is interesting. You have Tyler Kasak of Penn State. He has 1 loss. That was an injury default to Ethan Miller of Maryland. He's been phenomenal for Alex Clemson and the Terps. He's undefeated at 20-0. You have Ja'Cory Teamer of Iowa. He's in that mix as well. In this weight class, again, you got some depth. Joey Blaze of Purdue, Tommy Askey of Minnesota, Trevor Chumley of Northwestern, and a guy like Antrell Taylor of Nebraska. He is super dangerous for the Cornhuskers. 157 pounds, Dave, is one of those, as I mentioned, you got a few guys ranked in the top 10. They could really mix this bracket up a little bit. There are some landmines.
But it sounds like no clear-cut favorite. You don't
I
look
would
at
agree with that.
Yeah. 133 also really deep.
133 pounds, Dave, has 2 Big Ten champions. Braden Davis up from 125. He won the crown. And then Dylan Chauver from Rutgers, the reigning Big Ten champion here at the weight class. This weight class, Drake Ayala ranked number 2 in the country for Iowa. He's got 1 loss. It was early November to Tyler Knox of Stanford. Lucas Bird, just the 1 loss. The All-American for Illinois. That was to Drake Ayala. Braxton Brown, another Terp that's had a really good season. And again, you got some guys like Nick Bouzakis of Ohio State, Zan Fugit of Wisconsin. Those guys, along with Jacob Van Dee from Nebraska. Again, Dave, I can't say it enough. You've just got to be ready. I mean, you got to be ready every single time because you're going to get somebody's best effort. This is the Big Ten. There are no easy outs. And what makes this tournament so fun, Dave, it's the opening whistle. You better be ready to go immediately.
Yeah. I know you're going to be ready.
I will be ready.
I sense that. Let's get to 141. Bo Bartlett has never won a Big Ten title. He's searching for his first. You got Jesse Mendez, who is the defending champ in that weight class. Is it between those two? Who else can rise up here?
Those two guys on paper are the favorites. It's probably college wrestling's best rivalry. Last season, Bartlett won the dual meet. Mendez got him at the Big Tens and the NCAA championships. Very similar. Bartlett beat Mendez at the recent dual meets in Columbus. But Mendez, the reigning national champion, he'll be ready. Along with those two guys, you have Brock Hardy, Nebraska. He's really tricky. Had a really good run at the national tournament last March. He took third. And then Vance Vombar of Minnesota. I'm high in this guy. This guy, Dave, is 7 minutes of high intensity. They call him the Hurricane, and they call him the Hurricane for a reason. So again, 141 pounds, Dave. I will say it again. You better be ready to go on that opening whistle on Saturday morning.
Okay, so we've gone through what you see as the most intriguing weight classes, but by no means have we touched on everyone. Again, there's so much star power. So for people who didn't kind of fall neatly into those weight classes that we went to, who else are you excited to see? Who else should people be keeping an eye on over those 2 days?
125 pounds. Matt Ramos for Purdue has been phenomenal. Best record in the country. He's undefeated. A lot of bonus point victories for Tony Ersland and Purdue. He's been a great story. 2 years ago in national finals. Last year fell short of the podium. He has been on a mission this season. Matt Ramos, one of those guys. How about Mitchell Messenbrink, Mr. Techfall himself? He exhausts the scoreboard every time. 165 Messenbrink undefeated. Caliendo's ranked number 2. Caliendo, the one loss. That's a Mitchell Messenbrink. 174 pounds. Levi Haynes going for his third Big Ten title. 184 pounds. Mentioned Carter Strachey. He's going for his third Big Ten title. 197 is a fun weight class, Dave. Stephen Buchanan of Iowa, undefeated. He's been spectacular, but also in that weight class, Josh Barr, the phenomenal redshirt freshman from Penn State, and a guy like Jacob Cardenas, two-time All-American for the Wolverines. And then we got to talk about the big guys, Dave. Give those big guys some love. At heavyweight, Dave, 8 of the top 12 guys are from the Big Ten. You have Gable Steveson, who hasn't lost in nearly 6 years. And then Greg Kerkvliet, the reigning Big Ten and national champion. He's ranked number 2 in the country. A lot of depth at heavyweight. I want to say this, Dave, real quick. The Big Ten tournament, at its core, is a qualifier for the NCAAs, now less than a month away in Philadelphia. So the Big Ten has 87 pre-allocations that are up for grabs this weekend. There will be 43 at-large bids announced later on for the field of 330, 33 guys at the 10 weight classes. So that is first and foremost, but it is going to be some great wrestling. And you said it before, Dave. It is star power. I mean, the Big Ten is star power. It's the nation's premier wrestling conference. 17 straight tournaments, the Big Ten, and 18 most likely.
As I said, it coincides with the launch of the Big Ten Network. So I don't want to take too much credit for it.
Take some credit. Take a little bit, Dave.
But never not won the Wrestling National Championship in the Big Ten Network era. Great stuff. Enjoy yourself in Evanston. I know you will, and we will be watching. It's going to be an outstanding weekend.
I am looking forward to seeing you Matt side this weekend in Evanston, Dave.
I might be down there on the count. I might get a refereeing position.
By the time you leave Evanston on Sunday, you'll have cauliflower ear.
All right, my friend. Speaking of Evanston, pretty good hoops game there tonight. Trent going to rejoin me next for the dramatic conclusion of our show. Cats trying to keep their win streak alive. UCLA looking to regain some momentum. Our keys just ahead. The UCLA women's gymnastics team took home the Big Ten regular season championship over the weekend, capturing the crown in their first year in the conference. UCLA finished the conference season with victories over Nebraska, Ohio State, and Rutgers in the quad meet in Columbus. They were a perfect 9-0 in conference this season. The 2025 Women's Gymnastics Championships take place March 21st through 22nd in Ann Arbor. And from UCLA Gymnastics to UCLA Hoops, the Bruins finishing off their road swing in Evanston tonight. Northwestern's turned into a pretty good story here down the stretch, Trent. They have won 3 straight games, all of them by double-figure margins, something they hadn't done in conference play in 9 years. UCLA trying to bounce back from the loss to Purdue, and again, jockeying for seeding in the conference tourney. What stands out to you about this one?
Well, both teams, are very good defensively. UCLA, the one thing I'd want to say about them is Adai Marr's got to play more. I think he's a guy that can take them to the next level. He only played 6 minutes at Purdue. He's a real impactful player on both ends of the floor. They have that 7-game winning stretch. I don't believe he played in that first game, but the next 6, he played 20-plus minutes in 5 of those 6 games. So they got to play him more. And now Northwestern, it's been remarkable what they've done. You got to love KJ Wyndham's play. Averaging 14 a game in this 3-game winning stretch. Just had 20 points in the last game, and defensively been locking up, only giving up 56 points on average. So I think this is going to be a great game tonight. Should be fun.
They've been tremendous defensively, 4th in the nation in defensive efficiency during that win streak. Great stuff. We'll see how it goes tonight. Trent, appreciate it. Thanks so much for watching Big Ten Today.